fulfillment, my desire, and my attainment for the science that I'm pursuing. So all of us are a product of the environment, and whatever we desire, if we want to attain something, we should put ourselves into a good environment so we can actually be what we want to be. This is true for everything, and as such, it is also true for spirituality. So if you want to grow inside a Kabbalistic group and become a Kabbalist, which is a person who perceives the Creator while living in this world and has a full understanding of how this reality works and lives in a high level of consciousness, then you also need to put yourself into such an environment. In fact, what you're putting yourself into is an environment where you bring your dot in the heart. So all your other people with you, like the friends in the group, they're also bringing their dot in the heart, because the dot in the heart is an inclination for spirituality, which is to discover the Creator while we're living in this world. All right, and in the environment, obviously what we have the guide, the sources, the books, and we have the friends, and all of us together use the environment as a laboratory. So this is like a lab, so that we can go through a change, which we call a spiritual change, which will bring us to the discovery of the Creator through a tool called a soul.
Our YouTube just started. So just so everybody knows, we're at lesson
number 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're at 18. And the lesson is called The Process of Learning. And in the previous lesson, if you recall, we talked about the fundamentals of the methodology. And here I just summarized actually what that is. In a nutshell, it's a person who's asking about the meaning of life, and it's a person with a dot in the heart, okay? Because only people with, a strong dot in the heart, a real inclination to discover the meaning of life, ask this question. And then a person, there we go, sorry about that. And a person who's asking about the meaning of life will somehow find us. You probably looked into many things, such as, I don't know, religions, philosophies, maybe other kinds of teachings as well. So on one of those, you'll probably come to the wisdom of Kabbalah, which is us here on YouTube at the moment. Okay, and if you decide to carry on with the course, if you decide to carry on with the study of the wisdom of Kabbalah and want to become a Kabbalist, which is a person who understands and perceives a high level of reality, which is unity or equivalence of form, as we discussed in the previous lessons, with the Creator, then what you need to do is to build yourself in that environment called the guide, the sources, and the friends. And once you can do that, then you can actually, over time, develop for yourself a soul, which is actually a tool, a sensory organ that can perceive the Creator and live in that reality which exists, which we don't feel at the moment, but exists in your senses, which is called identifying yourself with the Creator. So a higher level of consciousness. All right, we can call it that way. Having a soul, living in a high level of consciousness, perceiving the Creator, perceiving the whole of reality, and all these things are the same thing. And that's the process that we go through. And today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how the process of the learning can actually be done inside the group. And that's hopefully if this aircon will work and we won't fry in here. All right, so let's carry on and see how we go. Now we're going to read a little bit from Baal Sulam as usual, and we're going to read from a book called The Introduction to the Study of the Wisdom. And okay, so we just repeated it. Is everything okay now? Okay, good. So fine. So we started the lesson and this is how we're going. All right, good. So let's read a little bit and let's talk about how the process of learning happens. All right. This is from Baal Sulam's writings. It's an introduction to the study of the 10 Sefirot. The 10 Sefirot actually means the 10 Sefirot actually is a description of the connection between the creator and the created being. So what we have in reality, as we learned previously, is a creator who created the whole of reality, and that should be obvious to us since we didn't create ourselves or this reality. And then there is me inside reality. And the study of the 10 Sefirot really described this book, which is like 6 volumes. It describes to us how we connect with the Creator through the desire to receive that we are and the desire to bestow that He is, and how to build that relationship correctly. In between that, we build something called the soul, or also known as the intention. So the whole book, everything about authentic Kabbalistic sources, is only a description of our relationship with the Creator. Okay? So why did the Kabbalists read? So why did the Kabbalists obligate each person to study the wisdom of Kabbalah? Indeed, there's a great thing in it worthy of being publicized. There's a wonderful, invaluable remedy to those who engage in the wisdom of Kabbalah. Although they do not understand what they're learning, through the yearning and the great desire to understand what they're learning, they awaken upon themselves the lights that surround their soul. Let's read that again, because it's rather interesting, because it's talking about something that we don't feel, but we're apparently attracting. Once again, why did the Kabbalists obligate each person to study the wisdom of Kabbalah? Now, when the Kabbalists write obligate, obviously they're not forcing anyone to study wisdom of Kabbalah. You can't force people to study. But what they do is they tell people it's worthwhile studying. Okay, because isn't it really worthwhile to know what we're living for? Isn't it worthwhile to understand how this reality works? Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to ask ourselves this question, why me, all the time we get a slap in life? Okay, so the Kabbalists say, hey, it's great to know these things because at least you know what's going on with your life. Okay, so obviously they're not obligating or enforcing or forcing anyone to learn it, but they're just saying, listen, it's good to study because you'll know what's going on with your life. So indeed, there's a great thing in it worthy of being publicized. There's a wonderful, invaluable remedy to those who engage in the wisdom of Kabbalah. Although they do not understand what they're learning, through the yearning and the great desire to understand what they're learning, they awaken upon themselves the lights that surround their souls. So obviously, there's something going on in reality which we're not aware of at the moment, but apparently these Kabbalists are aware of. So what are they saying? Well, they're saying if a person, okay, with a dot in the heart, studies authentic sources, authentic Kabbalistic sources, the Kabbalists are saying what happens is that a person, although is reading this, okay, although he or she doesn't understand what's really written in the book, because the book, okay, authentic Kabbalistic sources are talking about, so they're describing the Creator and our relationship, okay, in spirituality. In other words, they're describing the state of the soul, okay, which we don't feel at the moment. Now, a lot of people believe they have a soul. Unfortunately, they're wrong, because if they had one, they'd feel it. And because they don't have one, they just like to believe they have one, okay? But if we had a soul, we'd be feeling it. And since we don't feel it, we can't really say we have a soul. That's called blind faith, which is just believing something somebody told us. In the wisdom of Kabbalah, there is no such thing as believing in anything simply because somebody wrote it in a book or somebody told me. But what Kabbalists are saying, listen, in the laws of nature, there is such a thing that if I really want to discover, want to know something, I'll discover it. I'll find it, I'll find out. And this is how actually things work in life as well. When we really want to find something out, we study and we attain it, don't we? Such as a science. Imagine to ourselves how we would have developed if we never searched for the laws of nature, or we never did any scientific research. All our research is because we researched it. All our findings, actually, right? All our scientific development is because we researched something, we wanted to discover it. Okay, so we constantly researched in order to discover something that we wanted to know about, such as the laws of gravity, such as the planets, the stars, chemistry, biology, everything. Right? Well, spirituality is no different. Somebody wrote to us the knowledge they have, and they're called the sources or Kabbalistic books. Authentic Kabbalistic books, by the way, because not all books with Kabbalah written on them are authentic at all. Here we're talking about Zohar, the Tree of Life, which is also the Book of 10 Sephirot, and the articles of Baal Sulam and Rabash. All right, because Zohar and the Tree of Life, also known as the 10 Sephirot, okay, the study of the 10 Sephirot, are all authentic Kabbalistic sources that date back hundreds of years, and in fact, 2,000 odd years. All right. So these are authentic Kabbalistic books. Now, when we study these books, we want to discover our relationship with the Creator, because that's the only thing these books are talking about. So the Kabbalists are saying, well, listen, if you have this dot in the heart and you want to know your source, you want to know your essence, if you want to know the reason for everything that's happening to you in your life, then it is worthwhile studying these books, because even though you don't know what's written in there, because we have no idea of our relationship with the Creator, what happens is you grow a desire to know. And this desire to know is actually inside you, step by step, building the possibility to open up for you this new knowledge, this new wisdom, this thing you didn't know before or feel before. And this is exactly how science works as well. Because we don't know something, but we have a deep desire to find out, we do all kinds of things, and one day, all of a sudden, you have this click moment. All of a sudden you say, okay, what happened? The accumulation of your effort to discover all of a sudden gave fruit, and you had an aha moment. And that is how everything works. Okay, there we go. Unfortunately, we are going to cook. Let's see how that works. Nope. Okay. Not to worry. All right. So at the end of the day, this is how things work. So the more we want to learn, the more we attract upon ourselves the light that surrounds our soul. Now, this light that surrounds our soul might sound a little airy-fairy, okay? But actually, it isn't airy-fairy. It's how everything works in reality. So this is the initial point, right? The potential soul, an initial soul, okay? Or we could say the potential for the soul, the potential for a soul. Okay, for the initial soul. The dot in the heart is just a potential. It is not a soul, but you can build one from it, and that's what we're supposed to do. And remember, in the previous lessons, we talked about building spirituality from scratch. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that through all the things that we get from the environment, just like we do in this world. How do we grow in this world? By the influence of the environment. We have family, friends, school, education, all kinds of things that influence us, and we grow. Well, the Kabbalistic environment does the same thing. Okay? Just like in school, when we're studying physics, chemistry for the first time, we don't really understand what's going on. But actually, our desire to learn, to find out, is attracting the same kind of light. Okay, because at the end of the day, we're attracted to what we want, and what we want and the outcome, they pull each other. So this attraction is very important, simply because our dot in the heart wants to go back to the Creator. And if we study with this desire, okay, we have to study We have to be very careful. And we have to study with this desire, okay, not this desire here, which is knowledge. If I just want to know, I'll know what's in the book, but I won't get spiritual. I must study with the desire to feel the Creator. And that is a whole different ballgame with respect to the sciences we learn in this world. So although the approach is, the method is although kind of similar, the approach to the study is not. Because here we have to work with something other than our five senses. You see, this is our five senses. But we have to start working with a desire, with an inclination to be spiritual, which is to attain the Creator, which is His attributes of bestowal. So I have to aim myself all the time when I'm studying from my dot and dot. I have to aim myself to this point. Just dry knowledge will not get you spiritual. Dry knowledge is just information in the brain. When you die, it dies. That's it. But what exists in reality is sensations. Why? Because we're sensual beings. We're not intellectual creatures in the sense that our essence is not intellectuality. Our essence is sensation and feeling. We feel first. We process what we feel here to make sense of what we're feeling. So by creation and by default, we're sensual creatures. Therefore, feelings remain. And the mind only accompanies the feeling to bring an understanding and clarity to what we're going through. So learning the books as a source of information is not going to help us to get spiritual. What will help us to get spiritual is to start opening up our desire to want to be in what's described here. They're describing to us our relationship with the Creator in spirituality, how we perceive Him, how we connect with Him, how our relationship is. And we want to be in that. So we need to grow the desire to be in that. And the desire is what pulls force in nature. It's not the intellect, it's the desire. So first we must grow the desire and work with the desire. That kind of an approach attracts the light. And that's what we want. So from below, we make effort. From above, we get light. And light means that I understand my emotions, what I'm going through, and I can actually, light means actually an understanding about my spiritual growth. So it's nothing like, the fluorescent light or anything. Light means wisdom, understanding, but it's understanding through sensing spirituality. Not just like an intellectual understanding where you have some kind of a depiction of it at an intellectual level without a feeling. Just like you can't learn how to swim from a book without getting into the water, you can't learn spirituality if you don't get into spirituality. So the books and the sources, although we're not in the spiritual levels yet, are talking about those spiritual levels. And from there, because we want to be there, we can attract wisdom that will allow us to open up our senses, which is exactly how we opened up our corporeal senses when we wanted to develop in this world. The only difference is we can feel and see our corporeal senses. When it comes to spirituality, we don't. This is why a person must build the whole of reality himself. Just like the Creator created this reality, we have to create the spiritual reality ourselves. And the reason for that is, otherwise we'd never be like the Creator. we'd always be some kind of a secondary person, second class, like having a pet in the house. Okay, he's your pet or she's your pet, but he or she is not you. So the Creator doesn't want a pet in the house. The Creator wants somebody who can build the reality just like He built it. And the reason this is so important is because it allows us to be Adam, similar to the Creator. And that is the whole idea of creation. Accordingly, when a person studies, he or she will attract that light. That will give him that will give him or her the potential to go through this inner change. Spirituality means an inner change, which means the change of my attributes, which are dominated right now by my corporeal egoistic nature, in order to change that to a similar nature to the Creator's, which is bestowal. Once we do that, we begin to build a reality of bestowal for ourselves from scratch. And that will allow us to build ourselves at the levels of the Creator as we ascend in spirituality. So the Kabbalists are no wonder publicizing it all the time throughout the centuries to people saying, listen, life goes by quick, just like that. And mostly we're not happy with life anyway. So there must be a reason for it. Although we want to be happy, we just are not happy and can't really find a way to be happy. And this is why most people in life nowadays in the 21st century have no desire to do anything. They don't feel like they want to do anything, attain anything. And in fact, they're downright depressed. This is why depression is a big sickness. Although our country may be great, but we're just not happy. And how can it be that we live in really nice countries, I don't know, in Europe or, I don't know, in developed countries or so forth, but we have everything and we're still not feeling happy? Well, the reason is because we're not really connected to the source of our existence. So the Kabbalists are saying, in this world, it doesn't matter what kind of a heaven you build in this world, you're never going to get happy unless you're connected to the source that created you. And this is what the dot in the heart is. The dot in the heart is a connection that is now awakening in us, saying, listen, what's the meaning of life? Why are we living? What do I need to do here? I look at life, it's not really worth it anyway. We're going to die soon. Nobody stays here forever. And what's the point? Okay. So once a person starts to aspire and use the methodology correctly in order to reach the target of being like the Creator, he or she obviously becomes kind of like a superstar. Okay. Like those, what are those superheroes they call them? Yeah, they're superheroes. Yeah. Think of yourself as a Superman or a Superwoman. Why? Because you actually elevate yourself above the realm of this world by raising yourself to the level of the Creator. All right, and that is actually the purpose of life, to build for ourselves a higher level of consciousness. So let's read a little bit more and let's talk about what they discuss. All right, so the desire to learn is very important. Not to know, but to desire to be in spirituality. And that's the difference between regular science and spiritual science, the wisdom of Kabbalah. You want to study with a desire to be in that reality. Not to intellectually know what it is, but to feel that reality. And that's a new approach. All right, so that we must keep. It's very important to study with that approach. There's a strict condition, there we go, during the engagement in this wisdom to not materialize the matters with imaginary and corporeal issues. This is because, thus they breach, thou shalt not make unto thee a graven image, nor any manner of likeness. Well, this touches the point which we just discussed right now about intellectuality. Now, when we study something intellectually, it's great to understand, but if we're not in it, we don't really understand. We think we understand, and that is the biggest problem. Because seeing, feeling, touching, smelling, tasting, that's understanding. And if I'm not there, If I'm not really seeing it, feeling it, touching it, smelling it, tasting it, then it's not real. It's just an intellectual phenomena or an imagination of what things are like, but I haven't seen them yet. And that says here in this text, it says that is the worst thing you can do, because you'll be just so far away from the truth. And that's what's called materializing. Even though you haven't attained spirituality, in your intellect, you begin to materialize what it's like. And that is the biggest fault of everything. Because without attaining the truth, to materialize it leads you to no man's land. So this is why, once again, first entering spirituality and then understanding is important, because that's why we're sensual creatures. We need to feel first so we can understand and make sense of that reality. It's the same thing with babies. When they are born, they grow in this world. What do? They want to taste everything. Right? When they grow, the first thing they do is they taste everything, because they want to feel what it is first. If they don't taste it, if they don't touch it, if they don't break it, they can't make sense of it. This is why when they're kids, they break their toys. They have to break the toys. Why? Because they must discover what's inside it. And all these things are sensual. They bring sensations to the kid. This is how they grow. That's why they have to taste everything, touch everything, run around and see everything. Because if the senses don't absorb it, the mind has nothing to do with it. So in spirituality, it's the same thing. If we don't enter spirituality, there's nothing to talk about at an intellectual level. So this is why it says don't materialize anything. This is also why we must study with an aspiration to feel it. Not to intellectually understand it, but to feel it, to be wanting to be inside it. And this will open us up slowly, slowly, gradually. In that event, one is rather harmed instead of receiving benefit. Therefore, our sages cautioned to study the wisdom only after 40 years, or from a Rav, and other such cautions. All of that is for the above reasons. Well, obviously, you don't have to wait till you're 40 years old. I certainly didn't wait till I was 40. I'm sure you didn't either. Nope. Anthony, right, there we go. If you want to learn something...
I still got 2 years till 40, actually.
There you go. You're a young...
1 year, I'm not going to lie.
Young fellow. Okay, so previously, the wisdom of Kabbalah was hidden. It was a science that was really taught to individuals who really had a yearning desire for it. So Kabbalists didn't want to teach it to everyone, simply because if they don't want to value it, they didn't want to teach it. So previously, there were all kinds of restrictions to studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, but in essence, anybody who wants to learn, who wants to discover the meaning of life, can study, and the way to study must be through the heart. All right, this is something new that we're going to have to learn how to do. But if we don't do it, we won't discover it. We have to study in such a way that it'll begin to open our feelings up rather than our brain up to some kind of phenomena that we're not in yet. Because the moment I start to depict what we're reading in a materialistic way, I'll get stuck in that swamp. I won't be able to get out. So going through the emotions is very, very important, so we can actually make sense of building spirituality, because spirituality is only sensations. To rescue the readers from any materialization, I composed a book, Talmud Eser Sefirot, which is this book here, which I did mention earlier. All right, so the 10 Sefirot, very important book. I composed the book Talmud Eser Sefirot, the study of the 10 Sefirot, by the Ari. Okay, so the Ari wrote this, and Ari named it the Tree of Life. So Baal Islam arranged the book for our generation, because every generation is different. You can't go back 2,000 years and read the book of Moses. It's just not going to work out, guys. The book was written over 3,000 years ago or something, right? How are you going to even relate to that? I mean, that's just not going to happen. This is why religions were born, because they read the book after thousands of years and they think the book is talking about corporeal reality. Any Kabbalist who attained this spiritual realm does not need to talk to us about corporeality. He's not a historian. He's not an archaeologist. He's describing to us the sensations between us and the Creator. Who knows what happened 3,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago? Nobody knows. So the whole book is only spiritual books, authentic Kabbalistic sources only describe about our relationship with the Creator. And in those times, they wrote it in parables or stories or allegories. And this is why the book is like a storybook. So a lot of people think it's a history book. Why would a Kabbalist talk to us about history? It's just not to the point. It's like me trying to teach my kid quantum physics when he or she wants to play football. It's just like, do you understand? It's just like not there. Okay? Same here. A Kabbalist has no reason to talk to us about history. He has only one reason to talk to us, the purpose of life and how to get there. And authentic Kabbalistic sources only talk about that. And the reason we study these courses, these books, the way Bala Sulam wrote them, is so that our mind doesn't go to all kinds of corporeal depictions. Because by nature we're living in this world and we're attached to it. With everything we've got. All our five senses are we just want to cling on to this world. So the Talmud says Sefirot is really describing all the spiritual worlds in a way that there's really no physicality that can be imagined by the reader. So the person by default, by no choice actually, not default, by lack of choice, has to want to feel it. There's nothing to understand there intellectually. The reader is therefore by the study is forced to want to feel it. Okay? Hopefully in the future we'll study it, and as we study also you'll have questions about how to study it and so on. But the most important thing I want to give here is this: we are sensual beings and creatures. We're not intellectual beings. Our mind is just a support mechanism to make sense of what we're living. And as Kabbalists, what we want to do is open up a new sensory organ. The only way that's going to happen is by wanting to open it. And that is through the study, so that I'll have a desire to live what they're describing to me in the books. Without that desire, nothing's going to happen. If I don't want to learn something, I'm just not going to do it. Same with our lives, all right? So for example, I wanted my daughter to learn a musical instrument, okay? But she's just not there. She's just not interested. So I can't really force her into anything. I can't push her to do it. She's just, not interested. That's it. So unless we grow a desire, it's not going to happen. First comes the desire, then comes the learning through the actions. Okay, so Baal Islam did us a favor. There I collect from the books of the Ari all the principles, essays concerning the explanation of the 10 Sefirot. 10 Sefirot in as simple and easy language as I could. I have also arranged a table of questions and table of answers for every word and issue, and that the will of God will succeed in his hand. So Baal Islam actually wrote the book in such a way that it's like a textbook, like at university. So there's a chapter, there's an explanation to the chapter, and there's some definitions for the words that are in there, and questions and answers at the back as well. So it's just like a textbook. So this actually allows us to relate to us, because we're 21st century people. Well, he wrote it in the 20th century, but just think about it. He designed the books in such a way, which is what every Kabbalist does. In every generation, a Kabbalist makes the material digestible to the generation, because every generation is different. So Baal Islam did something for us. He said, oh, well, you know what? We need to make this study something like a university course, or like a course. So he's got the books, he's explaining the spiritual worlds, their definitions, their questions and answers, so we can delve into the details. And the whole idea of delving into the details is to want to discover it. Okay? Wanting to be in the book, as in living the book. Okay? And as we live the book, then we can understand the book. So Kabbalistic sources are only for people who are actually in spiritual attainment. But those who are not in spiritual attainment yet, by wanting to learn, can use the book to get into the book. All right, and that's the whole trick. Okay. Any questions there? Or are we all good at the moment?
Not so far.
Okay. So the wisdom of Kabbalah is actually very practical. It's a very practical study. So all we have to do is to integrate ourselves into a focused environment, which is very focused and directed, and with a group of people who do a serious study. If you want to do anything seriously in life, if you want to attain anything in life, you have to be serious about it. Everything. A musician has to be very serious if he or she wants to be a professional. Same thing goes for an athlete. The same thing goes for an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, anyone. If you want to be good at your profession, no matter what you do, you must be serious at it, okay? And the Kabbalists, this is why they organize for us the principles of the environment, how to study, how to arrange ourselves in the environment so that we can be very focused and directed towards the goal, and that everything we do inside that environment will actually help us to open up this new sensory organ called the sixth sense or the soul, or this higher level of perception, so that we can actually begin to elevate ourselves from this corporeal level into a higher level of consciousness. All right then, so let's read a little bit more. When one hears, okay, this is where we're going to read this from. This is from a book called Shamati. It's Shamati number 25. This is Bala Sulam's words, which Rabash wrote as notes. So Bala Sulam was explaining certain things, and Rabash would take notes in the lesson. And this Shamati means I heard. So this is what Rabash heard from Bala Sulam, and he made notes of them. And there's a book called Shamati, so you can read it if you like. And it's also on the internet site. So we're going to read a part of that article. So Shamati number 25, Things That Come from the Heart, is the title. When one hears the words of Torah from his teacher, here Torah means spirituality. So anyone who studies the wisdom of Kabbalah and is hearing the words that relate to spirituality from his teacher, he immediately agrees with his teacher and resolves to observe the words of his teacher with his heart and soul. So when somebody is interested in discovering the meaning of life, what do? They're very interested, aren't they? So they study from somebody, they want to learn, and they're really into it, and they have a nice positive vibe around it. Then what happens? But afterwards, when he comes out to the world, it means when you go to your work or your school, you go back to corporeal living, he sees, covets, and is affected by the multitude of desires roaming the world, and he and his mind, his heart and his will are annulled before the majority. So for example, we're studying now, and let's say you might be inspired right now to study the wisdom of Kabbalah. You want to discover the meaning of life, but tomorrow you're going to go to work, or even after the lesson you're going to turn on the telly maybe. All right, so you're going to watch TV or a movie, and what's that going to happen? Your mind is obviously going to go to the corporeal world, the desires of what everybody else has on the outside. Why? Because we are a product of the environment. It's actually a good thing to note. Think about it. Go to work tomorrow, all right, and see how you're influenced by everyone, by the media, by your friends, in the conversations, and see how your mind just drifts from one place to another by the influence of the environment. Try to keep a track of yourself. It's a good exercise because it allows you to see how powerful the environment is in controlling you. All of a sudden you discover that you've got nothing. No matter what environment you're in, that's it. You're just an outcome. Like a piece of clay in the hands of the clay, I don't know, what do you call that?
Molder.
The molder, okay? So the artisan, let's say, okay? Just check yourself out. You'll be shocked how much you're just flowing with the environment at an unconscious level. Now, humanity is living like that, unconsciously. They're just under the influence of the media or the environment or other people, and this is how they live, and that's it. Just like animals do. Animals also live like that. So check yourself out and see how you're under the control of the environment all the time. As long as he has no power to judge the world to a scale of merit, they subdue him. So unless a person is spiritually strong and is very much directed to the goal, he or she's got no chance. Immediately under the influence of the environment, and it will just flow like that. He mingles with their desires and is led like sheep to the slaughter. He has no choice. He's compelled to think, want, crave, and demand everything that the majority demands. He then chooses their alien thoughts and their loathsome lusts and desires, which are alien to the spirit of the Torah. In that state, he has no strength to subdue the majority. Instead, there is only one counsel then, to cling to his teacher and to the books. This is called from the mouth of books and from the mouth of authors. Only by cleaving to them can he change his mind and will for the better. However, witty arguments will not help him change his mind, but only the remedy of dvekut, which is adhesion. Adhesion, for this is a wondrous cure, as the adhesion reforms him. So this is actually a good lesson for us to understand how important the environment is. So for a person to keep his thoughts and his desires and his intentions directed towards the goal all the time, he or she needs to be very focused and very connected. Here, adhesion means that I'm very connected to the environment. So to my teacher, to the books, to the friends. So we're all very connected so that our minds and our thoughts and our desires are always directed towards the goal. And if we can keep that, what happens is the rest of the reality just fall off. Okay? It's actually quite interesting, because what happens is a person is really where one's thoughts are. So if you think about it, since our thoughts are an offshoot of our desires, if I build my desire for spirituality at a constant rate, I'm constantly working on it, then what happens is my thoughts begin to be directed towards, fulfilling those desires rather than fulfilling other desires. So the more we're focused in the environment trying to grow our spirituality, what really happens is that our thoughts also begin to function and work in realizing the desire that we have, because that's what they do. Our mind is a calculator. It is a tool. It will always calculate how to get what I want, but it's not the desire. The desire is here in the heart. It's what I want. Okay? So my desire is what I want. How I'm going to get it, this guy's going to have to solve. And this is the whole thing. So the environment is very important, because from the environment I get a desire for spirituality. From my teacher, the books, the friends, like we talked about before, in the environment. So I have only a dot in the heart, which is a small inclination. But if I grow that small inclination by the help of the environment, by constantly trying to stick myself in there, what happens is I grow my desire for spirituality, and then my thoughts and my mind start to work in trying to realize that desire. That causes something very special. I begin to forget the nuisance of this world. A lot of the things we chase after in this world are a waste of time. And I begin to understand that. I don't just believe it because somebody told me. I begin to understand that a lot of things in this life is just worthless. There's nothing to really go after. So I begin to immediately build myself a new reality inside a new desire that I have, and with thoughts related to that desire. Now that causes also something very special. I begin to see this world in a different way. I begin to see things directed towards the goal, rather than things pulling me from one side, one desire to another desire, rather than flowing at an unconscious level under the influence of an outer environment. What I begin to do now is to bring everything on the outside and funnel it through this new desire and understanding, so I can use the whole of reality to enlarge this spiritual perspective and spectrum that I'm building from the dot in the heart. And that's how we advance. That will take a while to do. However, that is how we advance. Right then, any questions on YouTube either? No?
Nope, not at the moment.
Okay, no questions at all. Okay. Not to worry. If you do have questions though, you can always send them to us by email. And yes.
In regards to that email, we were having some email issues, guys. I just wanted to bring it up to everybody so everybody knows. It's the server that we had at the Africa at Kabbalah.academy.
So give me the email again. What's the email address?
Africa at Kabbalah.academy. Okay, that's the email that we've been using.
Africa at Kabbalah.academy.
Correct. We're in the process of getting it fixed, and it should be fixed at any moment now.
Your microphone.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat. Sorry about that. If you didn't hear me, I'll say it again. We've been having some issues with the email and the server that we have. The email is Africa at Kabbalah.academy. It is in the process of being fixed and switched over to a new server, so just continue to send your questions and your emails in. If you don't get a response or if it bounces, just hold it for a little bit and you can resend it again, but we will have everything sorted very, very soon, and it'll be back up and functioning immediately.
All right, so patience is a virtue. All right, good. So
all the registered students will be notified by email as soon as the server is up. So you will get a notification letting you know that it's back up and rocking and rolling. So you will be able to send in at that time. Okay. If you're not a registered student, but say you're watching on YouTube, we will keep you posted and informed between now and the next class. Someone will also put it in the next YouTube video as well.
Okay, great. Do we also have an Asia email?
Good question.
Do we have Asia at Kabbalah.academy as well? I thought we had that as well. In any case, you can write here. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. Okay, you can use this email to write to us if you're watching these lessons. Not a problem at all. Or you can always also drop your question on the YouTube page as well if you have any questions. So we have advanced quite a bit. So please feel free to watch the previous lessons as well. As we're building all the blocks and the foundation, with every lesson we're adding something new. So the whole idea of this course is to have this nice foundation of what the wisdom of Kabbalah is, how to study it, what our approach is, where it comes from, the purpose of creation and everything. So once we get this foundation done, what we're going to do is we're going to add on a second semester where we're actually going to start working on practical stuff, how to work together in a group. Why it's so important, because like I just described, we're sensual creatures. We're going to need to have some emotional feedback. Okay, if we don't have some emotional feedback, we can't really develop, or we can't really understand our true nature. So how to do that, how to get into the practical work, we're also going to be studying in the second and third semesters. The second semester will be a bit more scientific. We're going to talk about the spiritual worlds in terms of its structure, and then in the third lesson we're going to talk about how to connect with friends and other people in order to do the study with an emotional laboratory where we can have some emotional sensations and feedbacks to discover our nature, and from that discovery we can then start making adjustments to how we want to build ourselves. So it's a very detailed, very intricate, and also a very personal study. Each person really goes through a lot of different states, and it's really actually it's a demanding study, but it's a very rewarding study, because you really begin to understand yourself, reality, and your place in reality. And all these need to be built through an emotional, if you like, an emotional, well, I don't want to call it a roller coaster, but emotional development phase, let's call it that. Okay, it sounds a bit better. All right then. So what we'll do is we'll end our lesson today. Next week, hopefully, we'll be doing another lesson. We might have a question and answer session next week. We'll see how we go, or we might carry on with the lesson. So if you have questions, feel free to send them through, and we'll see how we go. All right. If there are any changes in the program, we'll let you know. So make sure our email address is on your safe list, so things don't go to spam, because we send a lot of information out there if there are any changes in the lessons and schedules and so on. All right. In the interim, take care of yourselves. Have a great day or evening, depending where you are. All the best, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.